I'm Chris Murphy.
And I'm Jennifer Logan.
And we're the Community Theater Heroes.
We host a weekly podcast where we interview theater companies,
actors,
casting directors,
playwrights,
composers,
and other theater artists to give our listeners helpful advice, tips, and insight for their own careers.
And life in general, because we believe that live theater has the power to make the world a better place.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 5 of the Community Theater Heroes podcast.
We're here today in a very special on location in Newberg, Oregon with the cast and production crew of Jane Doe In Wonderland.
Jane Doe is an amazing theater company. What they're doing right now is live theater that is combating sex trafficking.
They use Alice in Wonderland as a metaphor to kind of build in and raise awareness for sex trafficking victims and red flags.
Hope you enjoy the episode. Hey everyone, we have with us today an exciting cast and group of people. We have the Jane Doe in Wonderland cast.
Hey, don't clap.
Yes. We're on location today in Newberg.
So far away.
Oh my God.
We were like, where is this?
We're in the trees. We're
Keep
in
going.
coffee shops.
Keep going.
Yeah.
There's a tractor.
Please introduce yourselves. Who are all of you lovely people?
Well, hey, I'm Erin Johnston. I'm originally from Canada, but a little bit of a Portland transplant. And I am one of the writers as well as the tour manager, and I'm in it this year as the character Nobody.
Nice.
So you're wearing a lot of hats.
Yes,
Nice.
you'll get that theme.
Nice.
Through the show, yes. And I'm Grace Booth, and I'm also one of the project leaders along with Erin, playwright. This year I'm directing it. Last year I was in it. And then I'm also our sort of fundraiser, and I do a lot of publicity for the show as well.
Nice.
Wow.
I'm Gavin Sellers. I'm from Placerville, California. It's a very tiny mountain town in good old gold country, California. I'm an actor in the show, and I'm playing the part of Tweedledum and Bill.
And Bill.
Yeah, the acting is.
And then my name's Drew Pannebecker. Forgot my last name there for a moment. I am from St. Louis, Missouri originally. I'm an actor in the show. I play the White Rabbit. I get to play the villain, and this is always the most fun roles. And this would be my second time doing this role. I was lucky enough to be asked back. So.
Nice.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Nice. Now, I'm not quite sure. Is it that we have started the show somewhere? Because it's on tour right now, right? Where did you guys start it? Where is it going?
Yeah, so we started this project actually in our master's program down at Del Arte International School of Physical Theater, tiny little master's program in Blue Lake, California. And it started as a community-based arts project, so they asked us to reach out to a community member that was not in the arts and create a project together. And so we reached out to a survivor named Elle Snow, and she brought the project to us there. And that was like about a 5-week intensive process, and then from there we grew this project into a touring model.
And what is the project for people who aren't familiar with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Jane Doe in Wonderland is the combination of a theatrical play and a survivor talkback, and it educates everyone. We especially target youth under the age of 18, but it really is accessible for everyone. It's good for ages 14 and up, but it educates on domestic sex trafficking, which is really an issue that a lot of Americans don't realize happens to Americans on American soil. So we're trying to combat both the stigma around perceived prostitution and to raise awareness around what sex trafficking is. And we do it through theater, which is exciting because it's a little less of a scary subject when you can approach it through the arts.
And I love that you have chosen Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, so that was actually Elle's idea. We were just kind of playwrights that said, hey, we have space to make something. And she said, well, I've always identified with Alice falling down a rabbit hole into a world she didn't know. Even before she was trafficked, she actually loved Alice and Alice in Wonderland. So it just took on this double meaning. And so the play is really founded on her idea of the Tweedle twins represent purchasers, their boyish attitudes and their entitlement and their lack of awareness awareness of what they're doing to Alice totally is in the way that they play games and are like, oh, I get to have everything that I want.
Yeah.
So and like for her, the trafficker was White Rabbit, who took Alice down into this world. So, and we actually have those two characters here.
Wow.
Why don't you tell us about your characters?
So Tweedledum is like a very, very privileged, not a very quick attentions, or a very, very fast attention span character that is always looking for another game to play. And it's really interesting because it's very fun to play on stage as an actor. But then considering the symbolism and what it's representing, it's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
How do you marry the two?
It's challenging to really think about it on stage. Just trying to play the character and the intention in the moment as like this just entitled person who is just taking advantage and playing games. But then afterwards, it's really interesting to see the intersection where you find the audience has realized, like, oh my gosh, that realization of like, oh, that looks like it's fun, and then, oh my gosh,
Right.
look at what has happened. That has just been taking advantage of that person that whole time.
Is your character based in kind of malevolence, or is it just kind of recklessness? What do you think?
Recklessness, I would say. I'd say it's a recklessness for human compassion and understanding of a human's plight.
I'd say also like naivete. There's a lot of like boyish innocence in a way that the Tweedles bring, that our actors bring to the Tweedles as well. So yeah, it's not even like an evil thing. It's just like, this is really fun. Let's all have a good time together. Aren't you all having fun right now?
And almost like a consumerism in a way of saying that, like, oh, I can just purchase a person like I purchase like a soda. Like, oh, on to the next thing, on to the next purchase.
Yeah. Do you find that your character is based specifically in the same kind of carefree, mischievous attitude?
The White Rabbit.
Or is it more based in a kind of a sinister?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. He is a dangerous character.
Does he know it?
Yes. Oh yeah. No. Everything with the White Rabbit is really intentional. He is like very cold. He's really calculating.
And who does White Rabbit represent in your...
He is the pimp. He is the trafficker. Okay. He is specifically. We're using a style of pimp called the Romeo pimp, who essentially like sweeps into a young woman's life and gives
Kind of
her
romantic, probably.
exactly boyfriends in is what it's being.
Boyfriends in.
Yeah, it's what it's called. Wow. So you, you know, and then and specifically, you know, we draw a lot from Elle's experience, our partner survivor, our survivor partner. And so like a lot of what White Rabbit does was done to her, and yeah, it's, you know, it's the constant text messages, it's phone calls all the time, it's getting to know them really well, it's pulling this trust out of a person, it's becoming a person's whole world, and then throwing them off into, you know, a brothel, or down into Wonderland. Exactly. From down the rabbit hole. It's dark.
Yeah, it's really dark. One thing we hope to do with the play is use a story like Alice in Wonderland, which everybody knows the story of Alice in Wonderland, right. And also everybody knows what it is to fall in love with, you know, someone that you're interested in. And what we hope to do is that through the two stories, if you go, hey, this might not look like anything, but there are a certain like number of red flags to look out for, or even this little bit of education that comes through in little moments in the play, but also getting to watch it and like, oh, I know that story. Marrying those two ideas really sets up a platform for people to suddenly go, wait, oh, this is actually really an easy concept for me to understand why this would happen to someone, and now I'm in a place of understanding and not so much in a place of like, oh, well, that wouldn't happen to me, or like, oh, that doesn't happen
like the
here.
destigmatization. I see what you're saying earlier.
Yeah, so it's like education about red flags comes out really clearly in the first part of the play, but also we like there's a bunch of moments in the play that is all about destigmatization, and so that another goal is that survivors and victims have a place to come back to, and a more understanding place that people aren't assuming that they know what's happened to them, or one of our big questions that we answer is, why don't they run?
Yeah, that's actually the question that many people ask when they're like, oh, you were in the life or the game. And there's a whole vocabulary around this world, which is there's a whole vocabulary around this world, which is also why we use Wonderland, because Wonderland is like so unfamiliar and there's this weird language, but it's all the metaphors line up really well with this story. Like we have we use cake as money. We use a lot of the language, like even the word pimp is sort of like sounds like it could be in a Wonderland world, and there's a lot of sort of words that sound like nonsense that are really used, and they're red flags in the trafficking world that just work in Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty.
Can you talk about, because I know for people who aren't going to be able to see it, because you guys are opening in Portland.
We're opening in Newberg.
We're opening in Newberg.
The 28th, we're doing a preview.
March 28th.
March 28th and March 29th, we're doing our official opening, and then we're in Portland on the 30th.
At the Multnomah Arts Center.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
for people who can't see that, I know that you guys have a trailer online, and we will definitely link that in for people who want more information about that. But kind of for people who are just interested in the project, do you have ways for people to get involved, or is it very kind of a repertory kind of thing? Is there volunteers? What's your kind of level of involvement?
Because I'm sure you don't want the conversation to end
Right.
after
No.
the end of the
Right.
show.
Oh yeah, no. The whole point of the show, because then after the play, a survivor partner gets up and tells their story, and the audience actually has the opportunity to then ask any questions that have come up over the last hour and 15 minutes between the play and the topics it brings up, and then the survivor and what they bring to the table. So it ends with actually a huge audience discussion about what are misconceptions, what are outlying questions, what are things in our community, and one thing that we're really excited about is our survivor partners are going to be somewhat local to the areas that they're speaking to. So we actually are going to have a survivor from the Vancouver, Washington area who's going to be speaking at these shows, and so the audience has that opportunity to be like, well, if I want to get involved, what's next? And we're actually, for these 3 shows, we're partnered with one way you could get involved is with this teen, or support these teens, which is Youth Ending Slavery. They're this awesome group of teenagers that are spread out through a couple different high schools that are raising awareness in their own classrooms for each other. So I know they do like a 5K walk to raise funds for their programs. They try to bring in survivors. Actually, Portland is an awesome community. If I've learned anything from coming up here and bringing this project here, is that the law enforcement and all of the social services have actually come together as a coalition, and there is so much awareness going on. So it's actually, compared to some of the rural areas around the city and other major cities, Portland actually understands that these people are victims, and they're trying to target purchasers and traffickers instead of going after the people who have usually taken the blame criminally,
Gotcha.
which are these
Yeah.
victims.
Wow.
So yeah, just to encourage people that there actually is
Yeah.
a ton going on in the Portland community already about awareness and education.
Is this an annual project you do every year?
So far, it's pretty new.
So this is your second
This is
tour.
our second tour, but we had a staged reading the first year. So it was a staged reading, a tour last year, and then a tour this year. And
Wow.
we're sort of seeing what the next step is, because it's we have a lot of people on this project, but we have even more jobs. So it's an incredible commitment, both from the actors, definitely from the project leaders, from our survivor partners. It's not totally sustainable yet, so we're continuing to tweak the model and see how we can get
What are some of the
awareness out.
challenges that you face, like doing this as a tour? I imagine there's quite a bit.
I mean, like when you guys walked in today, you saw that we were all painting, and all like everybody was in the room together. That's
It was
why-
chaos.
Truly.
Theater was torn asunder. People were running around.
yeah.
Silver
Hanging from the
shoes
ceiling.
cast aside.
The majority of us are just actor creators, so we take on every hat that we can to make it happen. So we don't have like a typical theater space that we build everything in. A lot of this project has been done remotely for a lot of the time.
Do you assemble the set together? Is the set going with you? How are you guys? Okay.
Yeah, we got a truck.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah, so we just strap that baby in a U-Haul and
Nice.
drag it around with us.
Nice.
So, Drew, Gavin, have you guys been on tour before as actors? Like, well, I know you.
Yes.
This is your second time.
Yeah, this is my second time with Jane Doe, and then all four of us went to Del Arte, and there's a couple of residency tour programs there that you do as a student, and then I was a part of another Shakespeare tour back in St. Louis years ago, an education tour, which actually was built pretty similarly to Jane Doe, small group of people who all, load the set in, load it out, do everything.
Yeah, I've been on tour before, but as a working actor, this project is actually really special and really cool to be a part of, because usually just as an actor, you're playing a part, it's a role in a show. I don't know, it could be any show, like, let's say, like Funny Girl, I don't know. You're just playing your part, you're doing your thing, and you're acting. And with this show, it's really kind of like an honor and a privilege to be able to be not only an actor, but someone who's raising awareness to these
it means something
to the teens and to people in the communities, that it's truly a different experience, because it feels like almost actor activist mixture.
Right.
You can't
so it's unique and special.
Yeah, you can't leave this one at the theater when you leave. It's like you
take it with you.
You take it with you. Like what I learned last year has stuck with me all year. It's changed my own perception of the world.
Well, now we had one of the phrases that we've recently picked up in terms of a project, the emotional toll and the emotional weight that a project has on you. We call it heavy furniture. We got that from a friend of ours. So with something like this that's so dense and has such heavy furniture, especially with a character that is either ignorantly reckless or outwardly malevolent, what's your process for moving that heavy furniture in for the production and leaving it so that it doesn't stick with you?
I think it's really, we talk about this a lot in the process leading up to the show. It's all about self-care, and that's pretty personal, but when you take on the role, you take it on, you do it, and then if you need a moment, you say, I need a moment, and you back off for a moment, find your zen, and come back. And then when you get home after a long rehearsal, I don't know, sometimes I just listen to 80s music in my room. I think self-care is really important in this type of work, this super heavy furniture work.
And then how about you?
I'm like running through my head right now, like what are the things that I do?
To give you a second
Sure.
to kind of help you deal with that. We did the Normal Heart up in Portland last year, and it was just a lot of heavy stuff that you have to kind of move around. So one actor friend of mine said that he kind of put a lot of visualizations in with his costumes. So as at the end of each day, he takes his costume off, and he's leaving that person there. He's leaving that pain there. It's a very visceral, tangible kind of step that he takes. And then, you can kind of leave it physically in the space. Is there anything like that?
Wow, that's actually really cool that you say that, because it's not something that I think that I was doing consciously, but I do feel, as you say that, I feel that that is something that I've done myself. Like there's this one specific leather jacket that he wears this year, and I think it's a great looking coat. Like I want to wear it. I want it, but there is very much a sense of me, like when I take it off, it's like I can take it off and put it down. That's cool. I'd never intellectualized that.
In terms of process, the characters that I'm playing are so absurd and so performative that my process is based on action and physical movement rather than emotional investment.
Sure.
Or mental investment. So I try to portray the character while keeping my inner state safe.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I would also add as a writer that a big part of the show is that actually it is very entertaining. It's got a lot of humor in it. It's got a lot of whimsy in it. All of it is metaphor. And so the way that it hits me, and I think it hits the audience and the actors who are involved, is that you'll sometimes have these moments where it really sinks in what I'm actually talking about, and it sinks in when you hear the survivors speak afterward. But a lot of the actual rehearsal time is we have so much fun. There's so much laughter. There's the school that we went to, Del Arte, has a really strong physical comedy training. So we're used to this kind of like not only a lot of a lot of laughter and a lot of comedy, but also a lot of companionship, like that it really becomes a family and an ensemble, and we're doing everything for each other, and we're there for each other. And a lot of people aren't local. In this tour, we have a less than half are actually local, so a lot of us have come in and we're staying with community members, and there's so much like family. Yeah, there's really a lot of generosity within us, and then also from the communities that we stay at. That it's, I think for me, that's a really healing thing to see how much people want this to change as well.
So I know you said that it's appropriate for high school age students. Have you had feedback from high schoolers like that have seen it? Like how have they reacted to the show?
Middle schoolers too, right? We performed for middle schoolers last year,
Yeah, not on purpose, but we did. We did a show for the Boys and Girls Club, and we ended up having about a 10-year-old boy or two in the audience that we went, oh, okay, and they were so engaged and so responsive. So the kids, know a lot more than anybody ever gives them credit for, but they are so engaged. After one show, this is like one of my favorite moments for last year, Drew, is when the kid in the back row was like, and he was this young teen guy who raised his hand and was like, how can I hold my guy friends accountable for like our how can I hold all like our language, our actions, because like I want this to change. He was getting really into it, and like Drew, you took that question.
He got super worked up. Yeah, it was great, and that's like it's beautiful. Those are the kind of responses that we get. Is like the kids, like they get fiery about it. It's pretty rad.
How did you answer that question?
Let's put him on this.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to deflect a little bit there. I don't know if y'all could tell.
You were doing great.
Because I can't actually remember, to be honest.
I feel like you talked about language.
Yes.
Language is really important. There's a lot of language that is very specific to trafficking that has kind of seeped its way into Pimp My Ride.
Is that a
Pimp My Ride was a really popular show on MTV for a while.
Okay. All right,
but
gotcha.
there's this whole idea of pimping something is like making it gorgeous, making it pretty, dressing it up, when in fact pimping is like selling a person.
So like a desensitizing.
Exactly.
Really.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know what kind of language content we have on this podcast, but like bitch specifically is like that's a word that everybody throws around, and it originates in the trafficking world, specifically to dehumanize a woman. Like that's specifically, you're not a human, you're a bitch, you're a dog.
Right.
And like we throw it around like it's nothing anymore. But like that's the kind of thing like that this show brought into my awareness. Is I'm guilty of it for sure, but it's not until you realize like, oh, this language has permeated our culture. Like we have all become culpable in like Elle's trauma. Like I not directly but indirectly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
like
or,
I was not responsible
everybody
to her.
dressing up like a pimp on Halloween.
Pimps and hoes parties. Like
Yeah,
It's a joke.
sick.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's funny, but to the survivor, it's like
Traumatizing.
Yeah, of
It's
course.
traumatizing, and it pushes them back. I think I had started talking about the question of why don't they run, and it really is that there's so much language and like misunderstanding around what pimps are, around like what prostitution is, that this idea that it's chosen and it's chosen for like fewer than 10% of the people who we perceive as or mainstream society perceives as prostitutes. It's 90% have a trafficker and therefore are a trafficking victim. So we really like, but we don't. Most people don't understand that. Society doesn't understand that. So that kind of glorification of pimps and of that language, when a survivor comes back to the world, if she or he, because it's not only women, hear that language, and they've been told by their trafficker when they were being trafficked that no one cares, they all know what you are, they all know this language, they're throwing it out, these are the songs that glorify us as pimps and dehumanize you as prostitutes or hoes. And so it's like you come back out into that as a survivor, and it's Like it's
How do
as
you
though
face-
everyone knows.
Yeah,
How do you
yeah.
move
Yeah.
through the world when consistently everything you see on TV is dehumanizing you?
Yeah, or how do you leave that situation when you think no one will understand
And nobody
or
cares.
help you?
Yeah, there's no safety.
Yeah.
Is the
Yeah,
idea.
there's a callousness
Yeah.
that's associated.
Yeah.
Why? Oh, she's just out there because
Yeah, she
all
chose
these-
it.
yeah.
But
yeah, well,
really,
she's probably on drugs. It's
Yeah.
her
that's a
fault.
big one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When in reality, it's
Wow.
like basically this person was kidnapped and is now being sold.
It sounds very, and I hesitate to use it, but it's just, it comes to me really quick. It sounds very PTSD of like a war zone. Like
It
it's a
is.
completely
Of course,
different world.
yeah.
It's Wonderland.
Yeah.
And then leaving
Drama.
it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
it's
And you carry Wonderland with you. Like, you never leave it. It's
That's a good point.
always there.
and that's something the show brings up. Like, we have one point. If you know the story of Alice in Wonderland, there's like Alice in Wonderland. There's also Through the Looking Glass, and then like so we actually draw from both stories. But there's one point where Alice actually and her character Jane run into the Garden of They run away and they run into the Garden of Live Flowers. And I play Lily, and that's meant to represent actually the voices of women and how a lot of this stuff that permeates, like, oh, she must have grown up in bad soil. Like that sort of judgment and that we can put upon each other is like equally harsh. And so the play actually addresses these things in big, bold characters and what happens to Alice as she journeys through this world. You get to kind of understand that. So that's what's really cool. That's why we love theater, right?
Yeah.
Because like we get to empathize with the character's journey. So just to kind of bring it back to a way that it's like, oh man, you can really hear yourself in a lot. And I know that's what this play is taught me.
Yeah.
It's like, oh man, I have not been the nicest person, even though I
Oh,
feel
yeah.
like my intentions in the world is to do good.
Wow. So if there's, I know we're kind of closing in on our time frame here. If there's something that you want people to really take away from the show, what is that individually? What's one thing that you really want people to take away?
For me, it's that everybody can make a difference with education and understanding, and in the smallest of ways. So that if you take the time to just get educated about how you can change your own behavior in like the very everyday things.
Can you give us an
Like,
example of an everyday thing?
Like, for example, not engaging in watching TV shows that like ridicule prostitutes.
Gotcha.
Like that's such a small thing. Or if a joke, your friend says a joke and be like, dude, that's not cool.
Yeah.
And here's why. And those like little behavioral things that make the world a safer place just between two people. Because you never know who you're talking to.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow.
Do you have one, Grace?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this has been fabulous for me in terms of just the way that social activism and theater come together. So this is maybe a little bit less, well, no, it is a takeaway. It's that basically stories and how you tell your story and reframing this story specifically from the survivor's viewpoint rather than the trafficker's viewpoint has incredible power to change our narrative as a society and our understanding of where people are coming from and what they go through.
Wow.
If I could take anything away from the show, I would say that I would like people to not be afraid to speak up if they're experiencing any of this or if they have experienced this, and for people to be supportive of people who have experienced it or are maybe experiencing it, to be open and to be supportive is a vulnerable position. And I think it's also a vulnerable position for someone to be able to share their story or to share their circumstance. But I believe and I hope that this show can give them a permission to say, hey, I have something to say. I need to say it.
Yeah.
I think for me, what I want out of this show more than anything is like what I always want out of theater, which is just like a greater sense of empathy, just like a greater sense of understanding that like you don't like I don't know, like I love Erin. I don't know her story. I don't know everything. So just an understanding that we all have like a lot of things that we carry with us, and just a gentleness about handling those things, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
We are running out of time, so
Do you want to do the?
We should do the thing.
We should do the thing.
We'll
Can we
do
do
it.
that?
I can't
Yeah.
think of a good story. I'll tell you that. I've had
That's
terrible
okay.
have you had a
auditions,
horror
but
story from this tour, like on stage? Have
Oh,
you had
God.
anything terrible happen?
This one or a previous one, whatever comes to mind. It could
Ooh,
be.
I had an audition one time, guys. Right when you said that, I had an audition one time where it was a very physical comedy audition with lots of quick lines. I got on stage and it was in a British accent, and I said, "Oi, you get over here!" And I forgot the rest of the lines, but I remembered the physical bit. So the rest of the 5 minutes of me on stage in front of this panel, this very fancy panel. I was at a
We've all been in
theater
front of those
festival.
panels.
Fancy panel. They all are judging you, and I rolled on the floor and did a fake prat fight with no lines. So all I could hear was like,
Dead silence.
me rolling on the ground. But I actually got a scholarship to like the dance thing from it.
This sounds like One Man, Two Governors.
It was
Was
one
it?
man.
Yeah,
It
I
was
can
the
totally
one.
see-
Yeah, where he's like beating himself up.
Yeah.
It was that monologue.
That's
Yep.
so terrific.
And I was like, "Thank you very much. Goodbye." I ran out of the room.
What's great about those panels is not only are you failing, you're failing for so many people at once.
Yeah, you're failing hardcore.
Let me not waste any of your company's time. Like,
Yeah.
come all at once.
yeah. Watch this.
Jump in.
Anyone else?
I mean, this summer, myself and Kate, who's one of the other writers, and Brittany, who plays the March Hare, we also have another little theater show that we tour called The Feeble-Minded Dictator, and it's a grotesque shadow play. But so it's all done behind. The lucky part of this is that, for the most part, it's all done behind these 3 large screens. Anyways, we were at the Halifax Fringe Festival, and I got strep throat during our break, and I didn't realize it was strep throat, but I until I knew I was sick.
Till
but-
everyone else realized
until
it.
everybody else realized it. But halfway, so after our first weekend of shows, we had like 3 days off. I got sick, and then on our Thursday performance back, my fever broke in the middle of the show. So suddenly I was just like dripping, and like through the shadow you could like see sweat like pouring off my face. And then there's one part where I exit, and like apparently my makeup was just like all coming off, and it was just like the whole show I was just dripping sweat. And because we're super physical, so I was moving. But afterwards, the Kate and Brittany were just like, "Oh dear, what happened to you?" And I was like, "I feel great. I'm not sick anymore." So that's mine.
Well, mine's a little related to that. I went to a really intensely physical theater internship when I was 18 in Massachusetts at this theater called Double Edge Theater, and they do this fantastic, super intense physical training. And so the first day that I was there, it was like, I don't know, it was like the beginning of September, and it was super hot. And we did this morning training that was like 2 hours. We were outside. I did this. I knew that I was getting dehydrated, but I just was like, I'm the youngest one here. I gotta prove myself. And so we finished that training, and I went into the bathroom and vomited and passed out. And then came out and was like, I'm not gonna survive the next 3 months. I'm totally just do it. I'm gonna have and people were worried about me, and they called my parents.
Oh,
so I was like, I'm the uncook. But then the whole thing, I made it through the 3 months. It was fun.
And now I'm on the spot again. Yeah. I don't know. I was like, I'm over here racking my brains, and I don't have any good stories. All of my audition failures have just been abject bad. Not even funny. Just well, I'm not getting that one. And then I have to just go into the car and stare at the floor for a minute. That's I don't have any good
It's
ones.
okay.
Learning how to sit in that discomfort is upsetting.
Getting back on the horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're glad
Ever since I quit smoking, it's gotten really intense.
Oh, good.
There was a little bit of physical comedy for everyone in the room. Podcasting
Imagine.
audience. Yeah, just imagine how funny I am.
Oh man. Well, we're almost out of time, but I just want to say thank you so much to all of you. I mean,
Yes.
more than just taking time out of your busy rehearsal schedule, we really appreciate everything that you and everyone that's not here, the work that you do and building it in, weaving it into something in an art form that matters. And on the way here, we stopped at a Starbucks, and there's this little flyer, and I can't remember the quote, of course. It's something like, "What are you doing for others?" And while you guys are still having, you're exercising that muscle and you're doing this as an art form, you're still doing this for others, and it's wonderful. So we really, really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, all that personal sacrifice, and everyone who's not here as well. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having
Thanks
us.
for
Yeah, thanks so much. This
Yeah.
was really fun.
Yeah.
And if you want to see the show, it's
The preview's in Newberg, right?
On-
Which is when?
On Wednesday, the 28th.
Wednesday the 28th.
And then
Opening night, the 29th, same thing in Newberg, the Chehalem Cultural Center, Black Box Theater.
where we're at right now.
Where do we get tickets?
www.janedoeinwonderland.com. You can reserve them there. And they're free for educators and for youth under 18.
Oh, wow.
And just $15 for adults.
Nice.
And it'll be at the Multnomah Arts Center on Friday, 7 p.m. Right?
7 p.m.
7 p.m.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you
so
guys
much.
so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And that's our show.
We really want to thank the Jane Doe in Wonderland cast one more time for letting us come down on a Monday afternoon during their busy rehearsal schedule to interview them.
And for blending activism and art in a way that serves the artistic community and the community in whole.
So please, please, please check out the show and follow them on Facebook, like their Facebook page, share what they're doing on your social network and with your friends and family.
Just a quick shout out. They are doing free for youth. Ticket sales are free for youth under 18 and $15 for adults. Free for educators as well.
So check it out. And as always, if you enjoy the Community Theater Heroes podcast, like us on Facebook, give us a positive review on iTunes, and make sure to share us with your friends and family.
If you'd like to know more about us or be interviewed, visit our website at communitytheaterheroes.com.